Nowadays, we are living in a globalized and interconnected world where most of the countries depend on other ones. Since the very beginning, there has been a division between developed and underdeveloped countries, but during the last years, this division has changed and have appeared the so-called emerging economies. These new economies have received many different names depending on the countries that form them, such as the Vista, MIST, N11, BRICS, and so on. In this video, we will focus on the group called BRICS and on the New Development Bank. First, we'll start by talking about its contextualization, then we will go deeply to its meaning and everything that entails, its main characteristics, and finally, we will give an overall view of how does it challenge the current global economic governance. The first meeting of the BRICS was in the year 2006, with the presence of Brazil, Russia, India, and China, the actual members of the group. But its real constitution as a group was not until 2009. The goal of its creation was to reflect the tendency towards a multipolar world concerning the international relations. This new world has an increasing global economic interdependence. Since 2010, South Africa became a member of this group. As we know, the global financial crisis started in the years 2007 and 2008, and it affected most of the economies of the world. As I said before, the BRICS was created in 2009, so in the middle of the crisis. But the fact here is that although the markets were failing due to the global crisis, the countries that composed this group still presented high levels of growth, especially in 2013. Moreover, this group was created to solve the ineffectiveness of the institutions derived from the Bretton Woods, due to they have not been able to adapt to the new world and to give to the emerging economies the importance that they deserve.
What's the BRICS New Development Bank? The New Development Bank, also known as NDB, was started with a main objective: funding infrastructure projects in the developing countries and meet the aspirations of millions through sustainable development. The NDB is willing to listen, learn, collaborate, and innovate. A significant aspect of their past is to establish global, regional, and local partnerships with new and already established multilateral development banks (MDBs) and with market participants. The NDB believes that current private international capital flows are not only volatile but also insufficient in volume. They offer maturity to fund sustainable development, which typically requires long-term investments. Multilateral development banks, also known as MDBs, can play a pivotal role in meeting these requirements. While the annual resource commitment from MDBs has gone up from 45 billion US dollars to over 100 billion US dollars over a 10-year period, it is still insufficient to meet the infrastructure development investment, which is over 1 trillion US dollars a year. Therefore, there is a need for MDBs to reinvent themselves and introduce innovative policies. The New Development Bank vision is not restricted to funding infrastructure requirements. They also consider building knowledge-sharing platforms among the developing countries to promote sustainable development. The New Development Bank is a key milestone cooperation between emerging economies and developing countries. It is a testament of the upcoming financial age in which these countries will have a significant importance in the world of development finance.
There are three main key features from the New Development Bank: South-South cooperation, equity in power sharing, and sustainable development. Firstly, South-South cooperation has as the main objective to meet the specific development need of Global South, namely those of infrastructure. BRICS governments are anxious to ensure that development funding provided by them is free of political conditionalities. The BRICS can use the NDB to multilateralize and by that legitimize their national interests through the strengthening of the South-South ties in trade, investment, and development, avoiding the impression of conducting self-interest policies. Thus, beyond targeting projects in the 5 BRICS countries, the NDB gives the BRICS the chance to present themselves in the Global South as an alternative source of finance to the existing international development system, with different development paradigms. Secondly, equity in power sharing, where each of the BRICS government has ownership of 1/5 of the share of the bank, which means an equal say in decision making. Right now, each member country holds an equity share of $10 billion, where 20% of which is paid up while the rest is callable. Last but not least, sustainable development. An important feature of the new development bank is its stated commitment to the principle of sustainable development. How? NDB could incentivize government to design projects that are respectful towards the environment and local communities. It could offer differential interest rates and repayment terms on loans given to governments. These criteria could be consolidated into a composite index to measure the actual sustainability of projects, both in terms of processes employed and outcomes achieved. Priority projects within the idea of NDV would be developing renewable energy sources, promotion of environment protection followed by railways, highways, in future to suit multimodal transport systems for the movement of cargo and a vast majority of their populations.
The creation of the new development bank is significant for the future international order, and it can be considered the beginning of a new era, as it is being interpreted by the international community as an important step by those emerging powers to compete with, or some will say complement, the current Western-dominated international financial institutions. Since the 1970s, poorer nations have articulated visions of a new international economic order, entailing non-exploitative interactions between the global North and the global South. But it is only now, with the BRICS, that are set to launch ambitious new economic institutions. So first, it demonstrates the viability and dynamics of the BRICS despite all the skepticism and criticism in recent years. What is important, however, is whether member states share a measured common goal that can unite them despite difference. And this is happening in order to achieve development. Because with the creation of a new bank, the flow of money will increase, what will help to fulfill the global need of more investment, especially in the developing countries, where it will give them the chance to restructure their existing institutions that nowadays doesn't have enough resources and will help them to catch up the level of advanced economies. So, the flow of money will be fulfilling the needs that are so evident in the development countries, where it will reflect a fundamental change in global economics and political power. The BRICS Bank demonstrates China's global leadership. However, it is remarkable that although Shanghai has been chosen as the headquarters of the new bank, the first president will be Indian, the first chairman of the board of governance will be Russian, the first chairman of the board of directors will be Brazilian, and the first regional center of the bank will be in South Africa. Surely, the US will try to maintain its dominance in the world economy, while China will continue its efforts to advance the new development bank and the BRICS. Yet, this should be an eye-opener for things to come. The BRICS Bank is significant because it is a direct challenge to the global order, led by the West. China and India are perhaps the two greatest beneficiaries of a new open liberal economic order, and thus, the BRICS Bank should try to push the IMF and the World Bank to be more open and transparent. And the final outcome will depend on the balance of power between the two blocs, the developing world and the developed world. What it is for sure is that we are in for some interesting times.